Welcome to CCRPG, where we open up our virtual table and play games with some good friends. I'm Bob, and I'm going to be running Lancer, an RPG by Miguel Lopez and Tom Parkinson-Morgan. You can find it at Massive Press on itch.io. Last session saw our pilots foiling the curious plans of Beryl, who had occupied AO Station. The crew fought and bested Ruby, the ASIN leader of Beryl, as well as Mark Tia, later revealed to be Marthus Adius, who claimed association with something called the Noesis Mandate. Ren Polides, owner and operator of AO Station, in a show of good faith and gratitude, has made their resources available to the DBC crew. Material, contacts, labor, supplies, intel. All they ask is the DBC crew stay on call in case they need more work done. In the interim between the end of last mission and now, all of you had some time to access and use the various material that's been made available to you, and it's been a little bit of time since since the last mission. It's probably been a week or so. So what I'm interested in is what you've all been doing with that time and those resources. Let's start with our intrepid leader, Astro.
Hello. Astro Jamin.
What has our famed leader of the DBC been doing since the end of last mission?
All right, so Astro Jamin, after the last mission, he has some time to sort of re-examine his role in the group, and he decided, despite playing an action hero in many films, many critically acclaimed movies, he feels maybe he's more comfortable stepping back a little bit, taking more of a director's role, you might say, because in real life, it's not quite as glorious as it is in the movies. His mech blew up at the end of last mission. He was sort of a liability for the group when he got held hostage when we were taking over the control room. So he's thinking about moving into a more support role. To that end, Astro, should I talk about the license levels I took
let's
first?
talk a little bit more mechanically, because importantly, I want to let everyone know, my universe that I've kind of created for this isn't the same as the universe you'll find in the Lancer book, which is awesome and so full of lore that I'm sure it'd be a great place to run a campaign. But I very much wanted to tell a story specific to our group. So things that are license levels and how they represent monetary values and access to resources isn't the way it works in our world. So a lot of the things you get, license levels, are going to be representative for your team of other things. You just got a sponsorship from Ren so that they provided you with a bunch of resources and access to things like teachers, training stuff, various materials. And that's how we're going to represent those two new license levels for you.
Right.
So why don't you tell us on a little bit more of a mechanical level first, you as a player, what stood out to you and what direction did you want to take Astro, and what did you pick?
Yeah, so I definitely was looking at a lot of the support licenses, and finally I settled on the Swallowtail. So that's a pure support mech. It has, it's basically a lock-on machine. So when you're playing the Swallowtail, you're locking on all the time. It has some traits that encourage that. For example, when you inflict lock on, your target also becomes shredded until the end of its next turn. So I was interested in, doing the sort of support role. And some of the things I like about it is you start out with one of the systems is called Marker Light, which lets you do a tech attack that will, on a success, give the target to heat, lock on, and they can't benefit from cover. So when we were playing before, none of us were really doing tech sort of stuff. We were all pretty physical, either shooting or melee. So I was very interested in trying a more tech build. And in a support role as well. I thought that was kind of interesting. And one of my favorite things about this is its core ability, prophetic interjection. It gives you, you activate it as a protocol, I think. And for the rest of the scene, you gain this reaction called tactical simulation, which means if an allied target in line of sight takes damage from another character in line of sight, you get to roll d6, and on a +4 you say, hey, actually that attack was a simulation that I predicted and on my computer, and that wasn't the real thing. So your ally gains resistance to all damage dealt by the attack and may teleport up to 3 spaces representing their true location. So that seemed kind of fun to me, so I'm just sitting in the back, someone gets shot and I'm like, actually, according to my calculations, and push up my glasses, you're over there. And the player teleports and they get resistance to damage. So
yeah, it's more mechanically in the terms of like grid combat, a teleport and how it's like represented. But narratively, it's more like in a movie, you see someone get shot, but then like the movie rewinds and it's like that's what would have happened, but like that's not exactly what happened.
Right,
because
it's kind of like
thought of something else.
Yeah, every time that happens, there has to be like a record scratch, and we come up to, I'm sure you're all wondering how I got into this situation.
Well, actually, I'm 3 spaces over with resistance to that damage.
If I find the sound effect, can we do that?
No. When you edit the video, you can do that, Charles.
So never. Okay.
Chuck always does that when we play Astroneer. He's like, you should add this, and I'm like, nah, I'm too lazy to do that.
I'm sure our
Totally
audience
fair.
might have already seen this, but I've already had to redo an edit because Chuck came up with something that was too cool that I had to go back and redo the episode.
I'm sorry.
He came up with in the episode where Evelene's mech is destroyed, he came up with the cool new art of like just a staticky image to represent the mech was destroyed. I'm like, damn it, I already did the whole edit without that staticky image there. I'm gonna have to redo and re-render the whole thing to add that back in.
Yeah.
But I think it was worth it.
It definitely was.
Yeah, so another cool thing, I won't get too in-depth here, but another cool thing I like is it comes with a drone called the Lotus Projector, which can be deployed to a space within sensors, and then it emits a burst 2 field where you can find any hostile characters that are invisible or hidden, and also know their HP, evasion, E-defense, and heat. So I kind of think that was cool because that last fight we did, wasn't that Frame Not Found guy? He was invisible for a time, right?
Anytime on his turn, he was invisible.
Yeah.
So, like, it's one of those things that on your turn, you could see him fine, but whenever he moved, he was invisible. So if you tried to do, like, it didn't come up much in that combat, but it would have been, like, if you were using your readied action, your, like, prepared actions to, like, overwatch him and stuff like that, you would have had, like, a half miss chance from the invisibility.
Right. But if I had my Lotus Projector at the time, like, right next to me, then he wouldn't be able to be invisible as long as he was within range of that. So I think that's an interesting drone to have.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that's like some of the more mechanical aspects of what you're doing with Astro. Also, you're actively making him better at tech. Like that's part of the upgrades you've been doing. And on the narrative side, like what has Astro been doing since the end of that mission to kind of like show where all these upgrades and updates to his character and mech are?
Yep. Well, so Astro decided, like I said, he kind of wants to take a backseat role, or as he would like to think of it, the executive producer or director role of the team. So he's going to be, kind of in his swallowtail, overseeing the battlefield, trying to assess the tactical situation and set the scene, as it were. But he needs to learn a lot more tech things. He wants to learn how to hack computers, that sort of thing. I think he probably played a hacker in one of his movies, but, his practical knowledge is probably lacking. So he went up to Torsay and is asking Torsay, hey, can you help me, with all this computer stuff? Can you be my master, my mentor? And Torsay's going to be, during this downtime, Torsay's going to be helping me sort of get up to speed on how to be a computer whiz. And Torsay, if you don't recall, is the operator on the DBC. So that's Astro's plan for his downtime.
Did Torsay charge you with any more concert tickets as price for teaching you?
Yeah. I mean, Astro will certainly owe her a few concert tickets. Well, better than the last concert she went to. Maybe one where she's not, in mortal danger would be good.
Yeah, probably be good. And I think, Torsay has definitely done that. I think what we get in terms of like what you've been doing is kind of like working with her, updating your mech, figuring out like what you actually need. Like Torsay is kind of your operator, is the person who from the DBC would be like feeding you intel and stuff. And she's kind of like showing you how to do some of that from the field. And she's definitely had to work with you and the new resources you've gotten to like upgrade your equipment in your mech. To kind of, get you ready to like do these things in the heat of combat, which, mobile on a much smaller platform than, a ship has, those things are trade-offs, So like, what's the new mech like? Obviously at the end of the last mission, it very dramatically in the final battle, in the final explosion, really, the offer only, your mech was kind of like fused into a solid metal statue essentially from the explosion. Like, did you rebuild it or did you start something new? Like, what's the state of your machine?
Yeah, so Astro would have rebuilt a new mech entirely. His last mech, is sort of a relic of the past now, or maybe it's a scrap. So he's starting completely fresh, and he probably helped oversee the construction of his new mech with input from Torsay as well. So it's gonna look kind of, if you've seen the Swallowtail and the core rule book, it's going to look kind of like that. It's like a sort of four-legged mech. It's not a big thing, but it's built for being very, very like it can. What's the word I'm looking for? So it has this retractable profile. It can kind of hide in places. It can it's flexible.
Very much a scout or a spotter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's how I imagine it. It's kind of like a Metal Gear, like a small Metal Gear is how I imagine it.
Yeah, or like anyone who's familiar with BattleTech, it would be a light, right? Like it'd be a light mech that has good sensors or something like that.
Yeah. So yeah, he's constructing a mech from scratch. It's a brand new mech.
Nice. And what's the name of the new mech?
The new mech is called the Director's Cut.
Very appropriate.
That's such a good name.
It is.
So yeah, I mean, Torsay's been working with you. She's had to make sure you're up to snuff because, like, really, the usefulness of your new mech is kind of like dependent on you being able to use it properly. So she's been working with you, tutoring you, and I think the scene we're going to open up with you is you're in the DBC. You're in one of the holds of the DBC, and there is nothing in there, and you are locked in. It has probably been like 10-15 minutes. Torsay said you could get out when you can get yourself out, and then left, locking the door behind her. And this is kind of like her last, one of her newest little tests for you to make sure that you can operate under stress. So what do you do?
Also limited oxygen?
No, she is not going to kill you.
That'd be a little too intense, probably.
But it probably is almost time for dinner.
Okay,
Meanwhile,
well, that's
Evelyn's
motivation.
in the back just turning a dial slowly.
All right, so I'm in the hold. So is there what's the normal door? Like, is it a big cargo door, or is it?
I imagine this is like a one of those like top closing kind of like airlock doors, because you're down in the holds of the ship. These don't, like, you're on a station now, so there's free oxygen about, but these storage areas don't always need to have life support going through them, right? So I imagine like all the doors between the different sections down here have like top closing airlocky style doors. So it's a heavy, sturdy, kind of closed door.
Okay, cool. So Astro's pacing around and he's like, okay, I can do this. I've been studying for this. Let's see. Is there a panel? He goes up to the door. Is there like a key card panel, anything like that?
Yes. Yeah, there's absolutely key card panels on either side of this door.
Okay. So is it just the kind that you would swipe a card on, or does it have like like buttons I can press? There's
no interface for it. It's one of the ones that has like a screen that could be just like a big button that you would press to open it. But right now it's like that big button is like grayed out and just has like red lettering that says locked superimposed over top of it.
All right. Can I take the front panel off?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, do you have tools on you that would allow you to like open this up?
So one thing I also got was a cybernetic kind of enhancement to my pilot. And what's it called? It's called the something suite. The subjectivity enhancement suite. So it allows me to kind of make a hardwire connection to any sort of terminal or plug in things, kind of like you said earlier, Bob, when we were talking, like R2D2, just like plug into things. But so maybe I'll try to use that, but to just take off the panel, I probably need like something more blunt before I can try to make a connection. So
yeah, as of right now, what you have in front of you is one of those, either you could use like a near field sort of card over top of it to open it up. Torsay took yours, obviously, to make sure you didn't cheat. But also, like, there's no keying on this card, and they're like on this panel. So you're gonna have to get a level deeper before you could hard connect to anything.
Yeah, gotcha. Are there any tools lying about the hold? Toolbox, crowbar, or is it
you
pretty much empty?
You cast about, and the room's kind of been emptied. You can like spend time, and it will cost you time if you want to like look very closely around to see if you can find anything.
Yeah, I'll do that.
All right, so this is just going to be a straight up pilot check. This isn't dangerous or anything. You're just going to have to, roll me a pilot check and activate any triggers that make sense to you to see if you could come up with a workaround to get into this.
All right. How about investigate? Because I'm going to be looking around the area trying to find something that I can use as a tool.
For sure. Study something in great detail definitely applies here. So I'll go ahead and give you a +2 on this.
All right.
I'll let you activate your trigger.
Let's roll it up. So
now, I do want to point out, you're not going to be used to this because it's not anything we've had to worry about at all up until now, but you have grit now.
Oh, yeah. So does grit get added to my skill check?
Yes. So actually, you would have a +1 natively. You're just better because your skills are going up. But because you're activating a trigger, it's now a +3 to your roll instead of just a +2.
Hey,
Gotcha.
Todd, in your sheet, if you go and change your level to 2, it will automatically update your grit and add it to rolls.
Gotcha. Okay, I'll do that. But in the meantime, I rolled with grit. I would have rolled a 12.
Okay, yeah, and I think with that, what you find with investigate is you look around the room, and it's not obvious at first, but this room does have some like panels that open up to get into basically ducts of various types, and you're able to find one that has maintenance equipment in it. It's not exactly what you wish you had in order to open up this wall panel, but it does have various spanners and screwdrivers of various types that you could probably use to jimmy off the wall connector.
All right, so Astra's like, bingo, this is what I can use. And hey, if I break the panel, it's my ship, so I could do that if I want. So he grabs like a spanner and a screwdriver, and he goes back to the panel, and I guess he's gonna like look and say, maybe I could use a screwdriver to pry it open. So he kind of gets in there, tries to leverage it, and pop off the panel if he can using the screwdriver.
Yeah, and that's exactly how it happens. You get in there, you pop it off, and there's an upside and a downside to this. Now, that when you do that, it disconnects the screen and the card reader. So those are useless to you now. But what you have behind it is the circuitry of the wall itself.
Cool. All right, Astra's like, all right, time to test this baby out. This is going to be the first time he's using his subjectivity enhancement suite. So he has a little, he has like a little thing kind of in his wrist, like a little cybernetic attachment that goes in his wrist. He opens up like a small plate, and there's a wire he could just kind of pull and reel out of his arm. And it has a bunch of different connectors and stuff for various socket types. So he's going to pull that wire out of his arm. He's going to like look around. Is it this one? Oh, maybe it's this one. And he's going to try to plug in a wire and make a hard wire connection to the circuitry behind the panel.
Sure. And here's the cool thing about like blending, the physical and the digital here is that this is a great bonus. Like you can actively, get into this system without having an access point. The side effect is you're opening your mind up to the digital. So there is danger involved in this as well. But it gives you access to things that you don't normally have access to. So as you plug in, you're going to have to roll against the security hardware that Torsay installed to keep the door closed.
Gotcha.
So you're going to be rolling another pilot check. This one is going to be, I'm going to add a difficulty to. And it will also be a dangerous roll. So if you get above a 10, you'll be successful, but with a downside. And above a 20 is just a pure success.
Gotcha. Now, okay, so
Risky is the word I was looking for. Dangerous works too, but
One of the skill triggers I also took when I leveled up was hack or fix, and I figured that makes sense. He's kind of studying up on this, so he's learning how to hack in a sense. So I think that skill trigger would apply to
I'm
this.
into it. And what I'm going to give you because of your subjectivity enhancement suite is I'm going to give you accuracy on this. So that is going to counteract with the difficulty of Torsay's installed security programs. So what this is going to end up being is it's going to be a flat pilot skill roll plus your hack or fix. It's still going to be risky, but now you don't have accuracy or difficulty. Gotcha.
And I'm also gonna make a case for another skill trigger.
I'll listen to it.
Might be a little bit of a stretch, but so here's the thing: like if he's plugged in, and it's sort of like he's hacking it, but he's also like he's plugged in. It's in his mind now. It's sort of this alternate reality interface. So there's a little bit of like presence of will, like willpower.
I knew where you were going with this. I was reading your skill triggers and I'm like, I know what he's going to make a case for.
So the thing I'm making a case for is take control, which is use force, violence, presence of will, or direct action to take control of something. So might as well give it a shot, see what the DM
as
has
Astro's
to say.
Yelling at a wall.
Yeah. You will open.
Hey, Astro, you all right?
You know what? I'm gonna start adding something into this when I think that's a good idea, but I'm not sure. And I'm gonna give you a devil's bargain. It's something that I've taken from a couple of different game systems, and I think it applies here. I'll let you take this extra skill trigger, bringing it up to a +5, but the risk is if you take this skill trigger, your 10 through 20 downside will be worse than it would have been.
Gotcha. Okay.
So either you have a +3 and it's the original roll, or you take that additional +2 and the downside is worse.
Okay. You're saying +3 or +5. What's the from grit, right?
Because you have the grit. Yep.
Okay. And yeah, you know what? Let's live dangerously. And see what happens. So I'll take the +5.
And Astro's really hungry.
After dinner, we go to check on him. He's just laying spread eagle on the floor.
The door is open, but he has drool coming out of his mouth.
His hair is like up on end. All right, here comes the roll. 24.
Hey, there we go. So it was worth it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Nice.
You hack in, you get hardwired in, you're scanning the security system, and something just sinks for you. It just makes sense. Like between the training and being able to our other pilots really wanted to see what the downside was, according to chat, but unfortunately Astro is too good right now.
Yep.
I think what definitely helps you here is a combination of the training and the fact that you're using this enhancement suite is letting you use skills that Astro has natively, and he's able to adapt them and be a little bit more adaptable in bringing like other things he's good at into this. So yeah, you just are able to kind of like almost brute force it a little bit. You definitely feel like it pushing back on you, but you're too quick. Like the downside doesn't get you before you're able to open the door and get back out. And yeah, you unhook the door, kind of like slides up, and Torsay is behind the door. She has a comic in her hand that she's reading, and like looks surprised when the door opens.
Astro will hold out his hands and say, "Huh? What do you think?"
Wow, I didn't. That was. She like looks at her watch to make sure she's not like imagining things. She's like, I can't believe it. I think you're ready.
I surprise myself sometimes, too.
At the very least, you won't get yourself killed.
Well, couldn't have done it without a good teacher like you.
Well, I think that means you're ready to get back out in the field, which is good because the supplies we got were generous, but they are going to run out eventually. So would be nice to start thinking about what we do next.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, I'm excited. I think this is great preparation for a hacker role once my movie career gets back on track.
Just promise you'll try to portray it a little bit realistically.
Now, where's the fun in that?
She sighs.
I'm thinking a character that has 4 hands so they can type even faster.
That seems so impractical.
Yeah, but it looks cool.
Is it all on the same keyboard?
Of course, yeah.
She grabs your arm and holds it up to examine the port stuff you added and whatnot.
Yeah.
She's like, I mean, how's this working out for you? It doesn't look like you damaged it, so obviously it worked.
Yeah, it took some adjustment, getting used to this. It was a little, I'm not gonna lie, it's a little scary when I plugged in to the panel. It was my first time using it. Bit overwhelming, but I was able to, keep cool and try to work through it. So I think it's working well, but I'm gonna need practice with it before I fully get used to it.
Well, it's a good thing that Ren has some connections with Lev to get you that. I mean, it looks like it's working out well for you.
Yes, indeed. All
right, well, I'm hungry and I'm almost to the next chapter. Let's go get some dinner. I'll read on the way.
Sounds good. Rubs his belly. I could definitely use a bite.
Well, let's get to it. And you guys kind of ascend up through the ship. I'm assuming that by the time you get there, the food's been a little picked over, but you did it fast enough that you get a decent amount of dinner.
Good. Still warm.
Still warm, yeah. All right, so that's kind of what Astra's been up to. Let us see what the other pilots have been doing. Evelene. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you, Bob?
Doing pretty good. Since the end of the last mission, what has Evelene been up to, and what are the things you picked?
I guess going in the same order you went through with Todd. I always kind of imagine Evelyn sort of I knew straight from the get go I wanted her to be a upfront melee build for her mech. I think this first mission kind of made it very clear that she needed I needed to toughen her mech up a little bit. Given the fact that she had her mech destroyed partway through the mission, and it was basically on its last legs for the remaining half of it. So I already I had been doing a lot of talking with the rest of the guys about what would be a good mech for what I was going for, and I think it became very obvious that more defenses, especially if I'm going to be serving more of a tank role, which seems to be the direction we're going since Todd's going more support. Jay with Rock is going with sniper, and I'm not even sure how to categorize Jeremy's stuff.
I'll be everywhere.
That's what I mean. You're basically a well-rounded.
Yeah, it's kind of like a mid-range skirmisher, probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
So yeah, I mean that's that's what I was sort of going for, and I ended up Evelyn's going to be scrapping her mech, and I guess I'll talk about that in a sec. But I end up rebuilding the mech to go with a Vlad setup, so a lot more defense and just some more offensive abilities as well.
Some nice retribution style abilities to kind of a little bit of payback for anyone who kind of ditch it out and take it kind of stuff.
Pretty much, and I redid some of her I always get the terminology mixed up here. It's the traits from the mechs.
Talents.
Talents, thank you. Sorry, I get those two confused. I swapped out some of her talents. Like, the big one was I got rid of Brawler and I swapped it out for Duelist. And I think that works out really well just because, one, like, she gets accuracy on the first time she does a melee attack. And since I mostly only melee attack once, all my attacks have accuracy now. And the Blade Master dice setup is actually kind of cool. Just because it's comparable to like Fighter in 5e D&D, except for the fact like instead of like I'm thinking of Champion for 5e where you have like a bunch of dice to work off of.
That is incorrect. That's the wrong subclass, but that's okay.
Which one? So I get screwed up.
Yeah. Champion's a different one. You're thinking of Battle Master or something like that. Does everyone else remember the word for what class Chuck took?
Yeah, Battle Master. Champion's the one that you crit
Battle
off
Master.
Of,
okay.
19 to 20.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, yeah. Well, the difference is that you actually accumulate die as you deal damage. So, like, you never really run out as long as you're still landing attacks, which is really cool.
Nice. Yeah, you kind of keep a rolling advantage going.
Exactly, yeah, and it seems like a lot of stuff is really useful, like obviously like the damage mitigation with parry and deflect. Also,
it's kind of like you can press the advantage if you're on the upswing, you can kind of keep that moving forward and like keep momentum. And I think like that's definitely a way to think of like how we describe Evelene. Like she's definitely a momentum style pilot, right?
Yep.
Like, so that makes sense.
So that's sort of what I was thinking about. I guess story-wise, like, I've always imagined Evelene's more of the person, like, don't dwell on the past too long. Like, if you need to move forward, move forward. So she's like, yep, Mech's screwed, move on to the next one. And she probably went through a couple of iterations of ideas, especially based on everything that happened last mission. Like, I think the first thing she thought of was, how do I get a mech that doesn't light on fire?
Yeah. I think what's interesting, too, is, like, I think the way we've set it up, Evelene kind of took the mech she had previously was almost like a repurposed construction mech, like, from her previous life, right? So, in a very similar way to Astro, you've both kind of, like, gotten rid of the mech that came from your past to kind of, like, move on to something new here.
Yep. So... And like that didn't work out. The fireproof mech, she didn't really like the design, so she ended up going with one that was a little more like defensive based. For example, like the Vlad has a higher armor, rating, and also like the deployable spikes, because that could be used for not only for doing extra damage as retribution, but I think she's able to use that for other abilities as well, which I might get into, or you'll find out soon. Also, one thing I kind of like the idea is, like, there's a lot of parts about the Vlad that are very mining-based, which fits her background pretty well.
Yeah, it makes sense that she'd incorporate that, for sure. Mm-hmm. Construction, mining, kind of like, physical sort of, like, almost like labor-style thing.
Yeah.
Don't have a weapon, need to mine, just ram yourself into the wall.
Oh, yeah, and like, the Vlad gets this giant drill at the third rank.
Nice.
So, which I'm definitely going to be getting once I unlock that. But I definitely added the nail gun, which I think is a really good thing because of her. She's acting as a mechanic. Like, in my mind, I like to pretend that like she figured out it was a good weapon because she was like servicing some other mech.
Yeah, it's probably like a giant arm, like a mechanical arm mounted nail thing that she was using in the hangar to actually do different maintenance things. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, what if this but a weapon?
Yeah, basically, yeah. I was thinking like maybe she was servicing Rock's mech and actually put a nail in the wrong place, and then Rock was trying to actually pilot the mech and it ended up just kind of falling apart because of this play nail, and she's like, oh.
Probably Astros or Dyne's, because we're gonna get to Rock's in a moment, and Rock's is kind of like probably one that you wouldn't have been working on, Evelene, in terms of like how he got access to it.
Yeah, so. Okay, let's retcon that. That was Dyne's mech that accidentally got screwed over by a misplaced snail.
Probably.
Sorry, Jeremy.
Dyne's been doing a lot of maintenance to his, so it makes sense.
Dyne was very angry.
Justified. And then I think I think that Eveline's probably. I can't speak for everyone else, but I would imagine she's trying to take advantage of the resources that we got from Ren as much as possible. Because as great as it is to have Astro and his funding, there's so much more that we can get from Ren. And I imagine that comment earlier about we have limited resources. Eveline's probably a part of the problem there. She definitely was iterating on a new mech. One thing we talked about earlier was. Before this recording we were thinking maybe for the Blademaster talent that Evelene doesn't really have formal mech training.
Yes.
Because basically Astro said, I'm making you a star, and she's like, okay, I'm a mech pilot now.
And
but now sorry.
Yeah, I was just agreeing with you. I totally think that amongst Ren's various influence they were allowed to give you is... when talking to you, Evelene, about what you needed or when you were sourcing materials, it was very obvious to Ren because, between Torsay and Ren and examining what happened and reviewing security footage, it became obvious that you don't so much have training as you have the willpower and the motivation, right? So Ren saw an opportunity here, and you're actually taking some formal training. Ren got you access to basically a mentor, someone who is training you kind of in the duelist style, kind of honing. It makes sense. You're no longer, what was it, Brawler, or what was the one you switched off of?
I swapped off a Brawler.
Yeah, so it's taking that Brawler and kind of focusing it, and that's kind of where the Duelist is coming from. So, you've been working with a formal trainer who, has been taking you both in person and in mech to kind of help you hone your reflexes and make sure you know what you're doing with weaponry. So,
sure.
That's definitely something you've been working on. And something that's probably going to be very obviously different with how your pilot skills move forward. And I think for you and for Evelene, where we're picking back up is going to be at the end of your iteration progress here. You've been working for a while, and this is probably Evelene at the point where she's finally gotten the... your new name here is hitting the target she wants it to hit. So go ahead and tell me where this takes place and what this looks like.
So I would imagine that Eveline's mostly been working. Well, she mostly works in the hangar anyway, but I think she's been there more often when she hasn't been training, just so she can get this mech up and ready. And I think at the point that when the scene starts, she's probably attaching some sort of generator to the back. She's definitely putting in the finishing touches and lowering in these parts in, trying to hook them up. Make sure everything is connected correctly. Maybe do a test run shortly, that kind of thing.
Okay, and that's where we see you. It's in the middle of the hangar. You are in the middle of getting some tests up and running. Your new mech with all its new emplacements and armoring and various wicked looking sort of much more purpose built. It's probably more of an intentional build. You built it from the ground up to be combat focused, so it's no longer kind of an unassuming engineered mech that has some weapon strapped to it. This thing looks like an engine of war. And we see Evelene in one of those little bucket cranes off the side of the mech working on something. What are you working on?
Like I said before, just lowering in this generator for this this protocol that she's come in putting together. I think it sort of would tie in with the it would sort of tie in with the fact that this new build has a lot of spikes, which are supposed to deploy whenever she takes any sort of physical damage. She's codenamed this. I'm looking at my notes real quick. The Morningstar Protocol. She's actually been really vague about it. Because, like, for example, like Astro's asked about it because he's just generally interested in the well-being of the crew, and her response has mostly been like, "Yeah, don't worry about it. You'll see it when it's ready." Like she's kind of keeping it as a surprise because one, she thinks it'd be a great way to show it off in combat, and two, if it fails, then she can just say that's not a bug, that's a feature.
And I think that's kind of where things are right now too. We have like Astro in the hangar, kind of like watching the you put like these final touches on the mech. And what are you thinking, Astro, as you watch her kind of like finish this? She loads in a generator. You see this big engine of war's eyes like flash for a moment as it like gets some power.
Yeah, so Astro's just standing back, arms crossed, watching it, and says to Evelene, that looks pretty scary, I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, it's just a little, like a porcupine. It's adorable. It's not that bad.
Do you need that many spikes? It's a lot of spikes. How do you even get in that mech without cutting yourself?
I mean, I'll just point at the ladder off to the side. Just climb up the ladder. Don't touch the spikes. Seems pretty straightforward to me. I mean, have you never seen a cactus before? I mean, people keep them as pets.
I had a cactus, and every time I watered it, I got too close and I hurt myself. So, maybe I'm a little sensitive to sharp, pointy things. Also, I don't like needles.
Look, I'm just telling you right now that the spikes are very important for this all to work. And look, there's benefit. Like, no one's going to want to punch a mech with spikes. And if they do, well, ouch.
Hey, I'm not complaining. He holds his hands up. I'm just saying, keep away from my mech. I don't want to get all, I don't want you messing up my beautiful new swallowtail.
I mean, what are you talking?
No hugs. Yeah.
What are you talking about? No one's going to even see it half the time. Do you really need to be worried about appearances?
I mean, are you kidding? Our mechs need to look pretty snazzy. I still have to decide on a nice paint job for mine.
I mean, we're not. They're mechs. They're just hunks of metal designed to do damage. We're not going to like some sort of catwalk or a fashion show with these things.
But what if our adventures are so legendary that they make a movie based on us? And we got to have cool mechs for them to replicate in the movie version.
That's true. If I don't know much about movies, and I don't claim to know more than you, but I'm willing to bet, regardless of what we do, they're going to like retcon or they're going to change it up anyway, do some artistic license or whatever they call it.
Well, I assume I'm going to be the director of that movie, by the way, and I'm going for historical accuracy.
Evelene just gets back to work and she's like, "Yeah, good luck. Good, keep telling yourself that."
The director, the star, the supporting cast.
Is this a one-man show or what?
It's like Tommy Wiseau. Future Tommy Wiseau.
Let's hope that's not the direction Astro goes.
The disaster artist.
All right, and he kind of tilts his head and re-examines the mech, and he's like, well, the spikes, I have to admit, look pretty badass. How do you plan on using this mech anyway?
I mean, it's really, is that the question you're going to ask?
Are you just going to ram into people?
Yeah, duh.
Seems pretty effective.
She's going to give them hugs of death.
And then if that doesn't work, I mean, I still got my axe, and then Evelyn will motion to her the axe, which I actually forgot to mention was updated as well.
So I haven't given you the update for this yet, Evelyn. But for advancing and doing something kind of like story fun here, we're saying the axe that you kind of like pulled forward from your previous build. You at the during last mission, you had a very at odds relationship with Payday, the claymore wielding laser edged mech that kind of like downed the direct application of force.
I mean, it's all good now. She's dead.
she is dead, and you took her weapon. And I think what we see during some of these flashbacks is you specifically take that weapon and you just strip out all of the stuff in it, and you basically build onto the edge of your axe like an activatable energy edge. And you're like, yeah, that'll be nice.
That'll do.
So what I'm going to give you for that is now on your, I believe it's your tactical melee weapon is your axe. Is that right?
Yeah. That's correct.
So normally that would do kinetic damage. So I'm going to give you basically ammo on this. So basically it'll have anytime you deploy with this tactical melee weapon, you'll have 3 ammo. At the beginning of your turn, you can activate it as a protocol. And for the rest of that turn, your tactical melee weapon, instead of kinetic damage, does energy damage and does 2d6 plus 2 instead of 1d6 plus 2.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing.
But it only has 3 ammo per mission. So once you've done those 3 turns with it, it's out of energy and it's just the normal axe again.
Yeah. What kind of damage it is? Sorry, I'm writing this down.
So right now it's normally kinetic. When you activate it, it will become a 2d6 plus 2 energy weapon for that turn only. Because basically it's not like made to work this way, so you're kind of jury rigging it. And it basically, you basically applied her energy edge to your axe. And let me tell you, there are ways this could malfunction, but we'll not get into that right now.
Is this one of those things where I'll find out at the last minute?
Yeah.
Risk and reward. I can accept this.
But yeah, I think Evelene's pretty proud with the work she's done on that axe.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to play around with the ideas of like how to modify like different things that rewards for getting stuff in this game. As we work through the game, if we find out it's a little too overpowered, I might modify the amount of ammo or the amount of damage bonus or something. But for right now, let's play with it here and see how it goes.
Sweet, yeah, that sounds good to me.
Astro will hack into systems. Evelene will hack enemies in half.
Yeah,
it's a different type of hacking.
It's all about division of labor. All right, so yeah, that's kind of where we see the end of that scene. Is I think Evelene gets in, and what's the new name of your mech?
I keep flip-flopping back and forth whether I like this or not, but right now it is additional applications of force.
All right, so you get into the additional applications of force. We see the mech kind of like stand up. We see this kind of like interesting shimmer, but that like kind of like goes across the various spikes on the outside of the mech body for just a moment as it kind of like powers up. We see you like rev up and test the energy edge of the axe as you kind of like take off and like re-equipped a little like cooling energy battery to the bottom of the axe. And yeah, we just see this kind of like awesome scene of like you finally getting it to the point you want it to be. All right. I think that finishes Evelene's comeback to the game. Let's move over to Dyne.
Yes, indeed.
Dyne, between the end of last session and where we're picking up in this new story arc, what have you chosen and what are you up to?
So Dyne being the more one of the more experienced members of this crew, like the last battle, like he's experienced similar things through all of his years traveling around in the outer areas of space. But he's like, I'm on this crew. I need to improve. Let's start with the mech. The Prometheus was originally just, I would say, a more generic mech that he chose specifically generic so that it could be modified later, because that was something that he had always intended on doing. And when Dyne was in battle, if you guys remember, the weapons that he chose were heavy damage, but also had a lot of heat, a lot of extra cost attached to them. And so I basically went all in on that. For the mech that I chose, I picked the Sherman. which is a mech that has a high heat capacity, but also has some traits that allows me to control it. So whenever I stabilize, I can choose to either clear all of my heat and go into the danger zone. I gain soft cover, and I have a system that will allow me to make stabilize a quick action rather than a full action. And similarly, I picked a talent called Nuclear Cavalier, which whenever I'm in the danger zone, which is half heat or more, I will deal 2 heat and an additional 1d6 energy damage on the first attack I make each round. But the real key of the Sherman is the ZF4 Solid Core, which is an integrated cannon. Basically, the way it works is that it works on a charge system. It holds up to 4 charges, and for every charge that this weapon has, it deals 1d6 energy damage and has a range of line 4. So at 4 charges, it will deal 4d6 with a range of line 16. So it will just blast a hole through everything within its path, basically.
Nice. And those very interesting, like the choices Dyne has made in his upgrade path here. And I'm interested to hear from you, like what narratively, like where do these upgrades come from? Where does this additional kind of like emphasis on control and compatibility with kind of like the synergistic parts of your mech come from?
Dyne has been working with a older engineer. He's worked with a lot of companies. His name is Dion Curis, and this man, he created an original model of a mech a long time ago, and it was used for quite some time. But as new technologies came out and new systems were developed, it was phased out, but it was always his pride and joy. And while he was creating systems for various companies, he kept on tinkering with the designs and eventually came up with an updated version that has all the systems that he feels would be appropriate. And he basically contacted Dyne and asked him to help him build this. And that's one of the reasons why Dyne's base mech was very generic, rather than Evelene, who is piecing together her mech, or Astro, who created it from scratch. Dyne is taking his base mech and just building upon it, taking out old systems and upgrading as needed to build this mech into what Dion wants it to be.
Right. So this is kind of like your mech of Theseus.
Yes.
You're kind of like this is like so this is the same mech that we've seen you use, but it's new, it's improved, it's like custom. Very much like as you go, as you're getting access to resources, you're finding yes, okay, I see here's one of the things we need to do. It's like this is the next part we're gonna renovate, this is the next part we're gonna gut, replace with everything new, and keep working towards the next stage of this project. Mm-hmm. And to that end, you've actually kind of brought the designer out here, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
So we have Dion Curis. Is that how it's pronounced? Curis?
Yeah.
Okay, so and I think that's the scene we have here. This is you working on the Prometheus, and we kind of get you at the beginning of this scene where you're working on. I'm assuming the solid core, right? That's the most interesting part of this new mech, right? Mm-hmm. So there's this. Where do you think the solid? What is the look of it? Where is this kind of integrated weapon?
I imagine that the solid core is basically attached to the right shoulder of the mech, as it's not an actual mount like a lot of the mechs have. It's an integrated mount, so it's basically built into the right shoulder.
Okay, cool. And I think, it's one of those things where it's almost like your right shoulder is kind of like morphed forward a little bit. It's almost like a little bit railgunny. It has like the sides that kind of like open up for things to eject out of it and whatnot. And we have you probably on the shoulder with it open, kind of like installing things. And from the catwalk kind of that goes around the upper shoulders of your mech, we see kind of an older man, graying hair, dark brown eyes, slight build. He just has like this big set of blueprints that looks erratic, right? It looks like blueprints that have markups all over it. You just see red pen everywhere. And you and him working together have like almost been like adapting and redoing some bits of the design on the fly. As you realize in like practical tests, it doesn't work the way you quite predicted it would. And it's one of those things, it's an ongoing project. And you kind of hear him from above. He's like, well, I think this is probably the limit of what we can do with what we got here. I'm gonna have to go back to the drawing board. I thought we'd be able to do a little bit more with, I'm worried we're gonna stress the reactor a little bit much if we go any further today.
Dion, I'd rather not stress the reactor and blow us all up.
Well, we're already risking that as it is. I think throwing any more coins into that wishing well is a bad idea.
Well, then you want me to hop in the mech and get the system running just to make sure that the well on the weapon is able to hold the charge?
Yeah, get it up now, and we'll take a look at it.
Well, Dyne just hops in the mech and just starts it up.
Yeah, it's one of those things where we see the same profile the Prometheus already had, but it's obvious that there's customizations, there's like new vents on the side of it that you just see as it powers up. It's like as like heat vents out of it, and you're kind of like building up heat on purpose a little bit to kind of like get the reactor to a state where it's like feeding energy through the mech. I'm sure we see parts where like bits of the joints are almost like glowing a little bit. We see the shoulder bits, even with some of the mechanical bits still open that you can see into, that obviously like its armor plating is probably going to go on that later. And you kind of like boot it up. It like stands up from a slightly like slumped position a little bit. And what do you do?
All right, here we go. I'm gonna initiate the stabilizers and just make sure that the heat goes up to the well. Here we go.
And he's like watching with he like it's almost like his blueprints are like one of those old maps that you have to fold like 8 times. So he's like folding it. He like gets it under his arm. He's like watching with his arms crossed and like a pencil like he's chewing in his mouth as he's watching. You can tell he's like taking great care to like see how different parts work. As you start to like build up that heat, you like watch all your readouts and you're like, okay, things are going okay. What do you do next?
Let's see. I don't have. He overclocks it. He's just like, okay, it looks like it's going. It looks like it's going. So Dyne's next gonna turn up the heat a little bit more to see how much it can take, basically.
Okay. Yeah, and you just start cranking it up and starts cranking it up a little bit. You're just running it a little bit further than, getting it into that danger zone.
Right.
And as you're doing it, all of a sudden you just hear from like, it's almost as soon as you start doing it, you hear from outside the mech, stop, cut it. And like, you start hearing that like seconds before, all of a sudden your monitors start throwing errors at you.
Oh, goody. Okay. Dyne immediately tries to cut the power to the mech.
As you do, there is an issue. Very quickly, it becomes apparent there is some sort of like self-feeding system that like even if you go to shut down the reactor, it just keeps getting charged back. I need you to go ahead and give me a
God,
pilot
did they create
check.
perpetual energy?
It's more like his reactor is getting hotter and hotter and hotter because he tries to shut it down and then energy shunts back into it and like heats it back up again. So it's never getting cool enough for the reactor to turn off. It's basically entering a meltdown. So yeah, what do you do? I'm gonna need like some sort of pilot check here. This
I'm
definitely
going
risky,
to
whatever
apply,
it is.
Stay cool to this situation. With the mech possibly overheating, going to explode, Dyne needs to remain calm in all situations.
And for Dyne, that's something he is like the best at, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is something that I think you've gotten even better at. Like this is something you are specifically working on. Like this system. So I'm going to go ahead and give you accuracy on this.
Okay.
Because you literally like helped build this system.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to do stay cool with +1 accuracy, and I rolled a 16. 6 plus
Nice.
6 plus 4.
All right. Well, it's it's good that you got up to a 16, but on this risky check, things don't go quite as planned. You're able to slowly cut the energy, and you're able to quickly use some of the redundancies you built into your own mech. Kind of the vent heat that specifically your oh, excuse me. The vent heat option that you specifically like built in is like coming online. Your ability to kind of like the ability you took that specifically allows you to do this quicker, right? That's
right.
What doing it as like a single action and not a full action
the redundant system
kind of represents. You're able to do that, but you're kind of faced with a choice.
Okay.
You're inside. You're in a hangar. You're in the hangar right now. You have like there is some excess energy that needs to escape your mech. It is either going to damage your internals or it's going to fire the solid core.
It's going to fire. It's going to fire the solid core.
And you just hear Dion from outside the mech. He's like, no. You see him running to like one of the terminals, like one of the control terminals that's on the catwalk. As you kind of like brace and like as fast as you can, you're like trying to like aim it anywhere that isn't going to like hurt something. And what does it look like when the solid core fires?
Because the mech isn't really bracing itself, because the solid core is an ordnance weapon that really requires bracing, and this is a pretty big gun. It fires, and there's enough force that the Prometheus just flies backwards and lands on its back.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's even like almost like a sprawling sort of landing because it's all in one shoulder, right?
Yep.
So it's like it pushes back on your shoulder, almost like twists your mech to the side. You're getting jarred around inside the cockpit. The mech just spins to the ground. You don't even know what happened outside the mech because you got basically thrown around. And you're just, in there as like you're checking the different systems and whatnot.
Quick question. Are you working on the mech like in the hangar where the DBC, our ship is?
Yeah.
I'm gonna assume Astro was in the ship, futzing around, and he heard some huge commotion, and he's gonna walk down the plane.
By the way, Astro, you might need a third mech. I'm sorry.
It's like, what is going on?
Yeah, you're probably like somewhere, around mid deck or something, and you just like the whole ship rocks for a moment, and you're like, what the hell was that? Because the last time the DBC was in threat, you guys had to fight off barrels, so you're like checking. Like I assume you probably like check the sensors first to be like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Yeah, and after a few moments, Dyne, from the outside, your cockpit door just kind of like flings open, and you see Dion there, and he's just holding this like clipboard. And he's like, "What happened?"
I'm like, it looked like some of the when I was trying to shut the system down, some of the energy just redirected back into the core rather than out of the system.
He just like pulls his hand up to his head and just kind of like wipes it down his face, and he's just like, "Oh."
It's like I needed to get it out of the system, otherwise it would have been a much bigger problem.
He like looks around, looks back down to everything you got here, and he's like, "Well, looks like I'm gonna have to stay here for another day or two to help you get this fixed."
I think I'm gonna have to be in this place for another week trying to fix that hole as I look up. As I look out of the machine and see the hole.
As you kind of like stand up outside of the cockpit, as your mech is kind of like prone in the hangar. It's like in one of the upper corners of the hangar, you just see like a hole that goes like 3 feet into the wall. It was like you shot at least to the other side of the hangar, and it wasn't like a fully charged shot. It was like you had just booted up, but like it definitely like burned through starship hull. You like see into some of the bulkhead of the ship, and it's just melted around it.
I'm just like, well, Dion, if that's what happens when it's at its base level charge, man, I'm glad it wasn't at full charge when that thing let loose. I feel bad for anyone who gets in its path.
I assume Astro has gotten there and is just like on the other side of the hangar looking at this big hole in his ship. It's just like, what the heck?
Another thing to deal with. He has his hands up on his head. You know what?
Astro's more afraid to tell Torsay than he is worried about the ship.
I can buy that. I'm actually really looking forward to seeing what Rocksmack is, because right now we got whatever's going on with Evelene. We got this walking explosion with Dyne. I almost want Astro in the third scene just so he can react to this one too.
All right.
He just yells to what was it, Dion?
You've had like limited interaction with Dion.
Yeah.
He's not so much rude as you can tell he has no interest in talking to you. So like every conversation you've had with him has been very like not so much stilted, but like super cordial. Like you've had trouble broaching like any kind of conversation with him that isn't like, so I hear the the life systems in the ship have been a little foggy for the last few days. It's like, yeah,
cool. Good
Do you like beer? Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Nice.
Like whiskey more. And then you like,
whiskey's good.
It's one of those things where like you probably like latch on to that and like, oh well, I have some really cool. He's like, yeah, that's nice. He like every time you try to like engage him on some deeper level, he's just like, oh, okay. It's almost like he's actively just like very focused on a couple of things, and you just have no success getting him to open up to you.
Have you seen my films? Well, no.
I'm guessing he is most certainly not.
It's probably one of those things where he's seen them, but he like barely remembers them. It's like one of those people who's more into like he's probably more into like historical like what are they called, like documentaries and like live on location type things, and you're in a lot of like narrative fiction and stuff. He's like, yeah, stories are cool or whatever.
he would watch Astro's movies and be like, that mech's not factually correct.
He kind of makes me think of the equivalent of like a current day dad who watches World War II documentaries, and
that's him. Yeah, that's him. Yeah, that's who he is. Interestingly, and I think Dyne, you know this about him, but he doesn't really open up about this. He's actually not from the Cygnus state. which is kind of why he's willing to work with you. But he kind of like washes out of a lot of the other design jobs he has because he's not really interested in helping them very much. He is the Cygnus state is kind of like the kind of federal state that you guys are all a part of. What you know about him and whether you know a lot about this other faction is kind of up to you. But there is another larger faction out there in the world called the Federation of Former Colonies. It is a kind of smaller association that is basically a collective of former colonies, things that used to be on the far reaches of the Cygnus state there was kind of like a few disputes, maybe a few decades ago. It's kind of like them seceding a little bit.
Right.
But they're more of an association of self-governed territories that work together rather than having more of an overarching thing. So members of the Federation don't really identify as like being Federation members so much as they identify as being from a specific planet or like, you know what I mean? Like you guys would identify as being Cygnians because you're all members of the Cygnus state and then also identify as being members of a certain planet. Their group is much more like, no, I'm a member of this smaller group that just happens to be part of a larger group. So yeah, like you have him on the ship and you know he's kind of uncomfortable like letting other people know that. But yeah, before he leaves, kind of the thing he brings up to you is just that, I don't know if this is something that has become well known around here, but it's been harder to ship things in and out of the Cygnus state recently. Do you know what's going on?
No, but now that you mention it, it was pretty hard to get some of the materials for a project here. We have to look into it.
I usually don't pay attention to things like that, but when I was sourcing the materials for this build, it just seemed like people had their haunches up a little bit. Everyone was playing a little coy. And I know there's like a million reasons why these groups would do those things. There seems like they're always in some sort of proxy war, but this seemed a little out of the ordinary. If you find out anything, let me know.
I will. I have a feeling that, well, if we want to continue pursuing this as far as we can go, we're definitely going to need to get those materials. Maybe looking into this is worthwhile.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna get back home. Hopefully, doesn't take too long. He like looks at like kind of like a little Palm Pilot style thing. He's like, I'm gonna have to leave tomorrow. Looks like the gates are gonna open back up then. So I'll be contact me or send me a message if anything goes wrong. I'll get information back to you as fast as I can.
I definitely will. I want the Apollo system to be as good as it's gonna get.
Hey, do me a favor, would you?
You.
Push it a little bit. We need to see where things bend and where things break if we're gonna get ahead of any problems.
No problem. If Astro's around, I have a feeling I'm gonna be pushing it as hard as it can go.
He like cracks a bit of a smile a little bit. And he goes, just don't get yourself killed and don't get our machine too busted.
Astro says, I heard that!
No problem. I'll do what I can. Thankfully, we reinforced the base plating, so hopefully I won't get too busted. Less busted.
He nods, and he's like, and that's it. He just kind of like, he says his pleasantries to you, and you guys part ways. And I think kind of just where we head from there with Dyne from like there to now is just, you work on it a little bit more. You help with the repairs probably a little bit. Mm-hmm. And, the few things that needed to get worked out in the remind me of your mech's name. The Orion? Prometheus. You're Orion.
Yes,
Got
I am
it.
Orion.
Okay. You can kind of like batten down, and it's functioning, at level. You kind of get at level to where you want things to be, and it's always going to be a little bit kind of on the edge. But yeah, it's a little bit tenuous, and I think that kind of like little halfway in between custom build and parts you have to work with is going to kind of be a bit of what your mech is right now.
It's not like I'm sitting next to an overclocked nuclear reactor.
Yeah, pretty much.
Let's push this nuclear reactor as far as we can go. Oh no.
Yeah, we gotta see how it breaks. So if you could just, break it a few times for me, that'd be great.
Just wait till I get to license level 3 in Nuclear Cavalier, and I will get an improvised weapon which lets me shoot my fuel rods.
Wow.
that is
learned
license level
nothing
3
from Chernobyl.
But hey, the additional effect of the weapon, I lose 4 heat per shot.
Oh, nice.
So,
okay.
So you've created perpetual energy, as I understand it, which I think I understand it perfectly.
That is not what he did.
What happens when you shoot a perpetual energy fuel rod at someone, I wonder?
We'll have to see when it blows a hole right through them.
Yeah, probably.
Looks like several of us have things to try out next time we're in a battle.
That'll wait till the next license level. Until now, I just will have to stick with my normal non-fuel rod guns.
I don't know if I can wait that long.
And
I mean,
last... go ahead.
If you want, Evelene, I can always, set you on fire. 2 of my guns do that.
Dear God, no.
Never again. No. You've become the thing you hate.
I feel like not to drag this out much longer, but I feel like Eveline's actually been super curious to see what you guys have been doing with the mech, and like she's kind of been banned from touching it ever since the whole nail gun incident.
Pretty much. Dion just whenever you would walk into the hangar, Dion would just leave.
and like she's actually been spying. She's like, "What are they doing? If it explodes, does that give me the incentive to come over?"
No.
Oh.
There's a big hole in the ship as Evelene runs in. Do you guys need help? What's going on?
You nailed it.
That pun.
I didn't even think about that. That was an accident.
Okay, moving on.
Last and certainly not least are kind of one of our star players during the last mission, and the only completely basically untouched members of the crew as of the end of last mission. Rock, you had like a star showing in the first major dangerous mission.
The goal is to shoot stuff and not get hit. I shot stuff and I didn't get hit.
Sticking to the plan.
It's a good plan.
So between the end of that mission and where we are now, let's talk first about like what you took and what interests you in your upgrades, and kind of like where that took Rock.
All right. Well, I took 2 license levels into the Death's Head. It's a very long-range focused artillery type mech. It has some interesting things into it. As far as like pilot upgrades and everything, focused more on kind of the assault level triggers, getting back into the practice of shooting, run and gunning and all that, because it looks like we're starting to get into more combat territory. For the mech itself, it has a lot of interesting traits to it that really excel at aiming and making sure shots hit, and when they hit, they hurt, basically.
Oh yeah, and talk about the mech a little bit. It's not what you've been using before, right? This is like a transition for you,
right? So this mech is so after the last mission, Rock decided that he needed to step things up, and now that we had some resources, he went to Ren and asked Ren what they had available that could help him do better, basically. And Ren was able to supply him with some very experimental tech. And Rock, so far, is seemingly willing to work with this experimental tech. Now, this mech works with some levels of precognitive abilities. Essentially, you get hooked into this mech, and it functions more like... what was that? Pacific Rim, I like to think of it as. Except not with two people,
like
because
the
that was
drift.
silly.
Yeah, the drift.
Yeah.
And for my fellow Gundam fans out there, kind of like the Zero system or the Epion system in Gundam Wing, or like new types from original Gundam, right? It's kind of like...
Oh yeah, this shit's super weeby, so if you guys have a problem with that, just heads up. Expect that.
Perfect.
I imagine very much.
There's edge on this shit. On this mech.
I imagine very much. It's kind of like you are past, like with the kind of like fusing of your consciousness a little bit. It's one of those things where your mind directly has access to higher levels of processing than like the human mind was meant to be able to do, right? And that's one of the things we're going to get into heavily is like you have to like get used to that, right? Mm-hmm. You're like, and I imagine this precognitive stuff is very much like, you know, humans are good at pattern recognition in a way that's kind of odd, right? Like they are really good at a couple of these high level sort of neurological things that humans' minds are set up to do. Plug a large computer processor into that so that humans can like shore up the parts that the minds are bad at, like exact numbers and like keeping track of like small interval things. Like all of a sudden, I think, you know, a lot of it is just like you're able to process information faster and more efficiently and make predictions about like where things are going way better than like a normal human would be able to do.
Like just being in the mech, you're constantly and unconsciously like gathering data constantly.
Right. Like its sensors are feeding directly into your mind. So instead of reading off of a dashboard, you have a person to your left. It's almost like your mind is being fed the information that there's a person to your left.
Right. The mechanical benefits of this are I can re-roll the first range attack each round if I want to, but I have to keep the second result. And all of my range attacks gain a +1 to their attack roll. So some real good stuff. And then the core system for it is the neural shunt, where I like to think of it as it pushes the brain so far that like I can't move. I have to completely focus on the targeting. But if I am able to hit someone when I'm doing this, they take extra damage, basically.
Yeah, it's like even the slightest vibration of your mech would throw off the aim. That's how exact the aim you're aiming for is, that you're able to like perfectly hit the exact spot you need to, but like you have to put everything into complete alignment to pull that off.
Yeah, yep.
And then I think, we talked a little bit about how you don't know a ton about where this tech came from or, you know, whose tech this is even. Just that, like, Ren said they were able to source it for you. They need someone who's, like, already, you know, like, an efficient pilot. And it's kind of one of those things. You told me that it was very appealing to Rock because it kind of like pushed past limits, and I imagine that helped you kind of overcome some of your, you know, reluctance to work with something so unknown.
Mm-hmm.
because this is kind of a bit of a black box. They shipped it to you. You have instructions on like how to maintenance it and things like that. But like its inner workings, there are parts of how it works that just are opaque to you. And you know that the data on this frame is being collected, but not quite who for. But damn if it isn't frickin' nice. And I think another one of the things we talked about is, Rock's had to adapt to that. So tell me a little bit how Rock's been doing, getting used to this new mode of piloting.
Well, basically all of our downtime, like, I would say Rock probably just isn't on or anywhere near the ship for, like, the last week. He's basically just spent time in the mech with, like, Ren's people kind of testing it, just getting used to piloting it, and then, like, coming back to the ship and just, like, passing out, if he even comes back, sometimes. And that's basically been like all I've been doing for most of it is just getting used to that drive system, getting used to like how
the very intensive.
With them.
Yeah, it's like exhausting, right? It's a new way, like not only is it piloting, but it's a new way to think and a new like skill that you kind of had to learn. And I think that opens us up to where we're kind of like coming back into Rock. You've had one of these more recent training sessions and things went a little awry for you. Why don't you tell me what happened, Rock? Why you've ended up here with your buddy Dyne in the med bay of the DBC. What happened?
Before I forget, coming back to that, I was going to tie in also the talents I took was Crack Shot 3, so I got 2 and 3, which I figured made sense with the direction I was going with the mech.
It is like that is the thing that you've been doing to a degree that like defines focus, right?
Right. And then I would be injured slightly in the medical bay when Dyne gets in, I'd say, laying down.
Dyne walks in, he's like, again? You've been pushing yourself too hard.
Yeah, that's what some of the coats have been saying too. But I'm still fine. My leg's a little, they're worried that I ruptured a muscle in it, but I don't think it's that
bad. Rock, you need to stop pushing yourself. Dyne walks over to medicine cabinet, pulls out a single painkiller, gets some water, gives it to Rock. The drugs can only do so much. They can mask the pain, but they can't... Well, this will mask the pain. It won't heal the body.
Yeah, that comes with time, I know. Look, it's hard. I mean, you try to move your leg, the mech's leg, but you move your leg, but you think it's the other. It's hard to do.
It sounds hard to do.
Anyways.
Yeah, you, I would say Dyne, you kind of like look him over a little bit, and you're kind of surprised that he got here seemingly okay. He has like a bad like pulled muscle and strain in his right leg. It's like one of those ones that can heal, but you're like, shit, like we're gonna have to like maybe tape him up a little bit and like give him a crutch for a bit.
Yeah, that's what Dyne's gonna do. He's like, don't move. I'm going to get some tape, and then I'm going to get you a crutch, and then you're going to stay here for the rest of the day.
Is that supposed to be a joke about moving?
Okay.
Look, you tell me next time which muscle you have to try to, stretch to get those high-stress mag clamps on the feet to work.
And you tell me how to not blow a hole in the inside of the DBC's hanger. As Dyne just rolls his eyes.
Yeah, I was meaning to ask about the skylight.
Dion and I were testing the new system on my mech, and little bit of an energy shunt. Had to discharge the heat somehow. The gun was the only way.
I'll just kind of like nod a little bit and go, it's not really trigger discipline, I suppose, but have you ever had formal mech training?
Yeah. Shortly after I started out on my own. I didn't start off that way. But, yeah.
I mean military.
Military, no. But I did, at the start, paid for my own lessons. And then basically the rest of it is just combat experience.
Yeah. Speaking of, or lack thereof, how are the others doing?
Well, Evelene's actually receiving some training, so she's going from, basically going on pure talent to actually making use of that talent. She didn't do bad, but, obviously she was rough around the edges. And Astro's going in a completely different direction. I think it's a good one, but we'll see. Hopefully Torsay won't be too hard on him. Wait, let me rephrase. I hope Torsay is as hard as she can be. I think he needs to push.
Kind of do like a little bit of look on my face, like I'm not fully registering what you're saying, but just kind of nod. Yeah, I'm kind of worried about the two of them. I mean, what we came across, that was real combat. I wasn't kind of expecting that, signing up for the whole movie star, and I say that with quotes with my fingers, movie stars, gallianting around the solar system, trading and whatnot.
I expected some minor combat, but not something quite like that. I mean, I've experienced that before several times in the past, but that was, I think it was a shock to both Evelene and Astro. A big shock. Hopefully a good one.
We're going to need to bring him up if this is going to continue.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't expect Ren is going to give us all of this and not expect us to use it.
Oh,
and
no.
I don't expect things to just get easier from here. I mean, Beryl was okay, but their experience and numbers aside, that thing that we fought, I don't even know what to say about it.
In all of my years, I don't think I've ever seen a mech quite like that. I have some suspicions as to where it might have come from, but even then, that's just hearsay at best.
I almost don't want to call it a mech. I almost feel like it wasn't. Like, it was some alien species or something.
The way it regenerated almost seemed organic. Kind of like how you or I heal, as I kind of look at Rock's leg as I'm taping it up.
Yeah.
Well, on the bright side, we did learn that energy weapons seem to disrupt healing, assuming we run into similar models in the future. Hopefully not, but always be prepared.
Yeah, do you think the movie star is going to be able to cut it?
I think he will. I think he's heading in the right direction. I just think it's going to take him a little while to adjust from, just being a movie star. If we're going to survive this, especially as a group, he's going to need to pick up his skills real quick. Fortunately, it seems both you and I are heading in the right direction to help cover some of the gaps until both Evelene and Astro pick up those skills.
Did you ever wonder why I fight at such long range?
No, why?
Where I came from and the fighting I've done, we're always outnumbered. You never had the good equipment. The odds were always stacked against you. You didn't have a choice on any of that. If you were going to live, you needed to stay away, stay far, and be a good shot.
And you are a very good shot.
Fortunately, it came with time. But at least this new mech, I'm kind of able to translate that direct ability into it and not look down targeting sensors all the time. It's unique.
That's good. Just take it easy, though. It's obviously wearing on you harder. Really, really hard, actually. You just seem really worn out.
And you blew a hole in the ship. Look, I think we both agree that if we are going to get through this, you and I are also going to have to step it up. We got to cover for him, too.
Oh, yeah. Fortunately, my fighting style in mechs has always been to be kind of the balance. I always had to learn to adapt to any situation, be it forced into melee range or long range, and my mech's designed to handle all of those. Maybe not quite as strong at as long range as you, but I can definitely take a hit or two.
I suppose it has its own level of elegance. I'll lean back in the bed.
Well, elegance until you blow a hole into the side of a starship. I mean, at least we'll have a good way to enter a giant door if we need to. as I just think about it, I'm just like, yeah, I could definitely blow a hole through the side of a ship.
Yeah, speaking of doors, is it true that our faithful captain got himself stuck in the hangar at some point? I heard someone say he was yelling at the door to open.
Oh, that was one of Torsay's training exercises. She basically told him he had to get himself out on his own or he wouldn't get dinner.
Thank God. I mean, I legitimately was worried for a second that he got himself stuck in a hangar bay.
Well, I mean...
Ye of little faith.
I mean, yelling at the door is par for the course, but at least he was able to get himself out. I'm not sure how effective the yelling was.
When yelling at the door works, the Astro story.
Coming to
That's
Lifetime.
the title of his autobiography.
That's the day it all turned around for me, when I realized I could charm electronic systems.
By the way, I've also picked up the charm skill trigger, so I was also thinking of ways to incorporate that too. So you're not far off.
If you ever have to deal with an AI or a VI, that might come in handy. So
Exactly, yeah.
I do not look forward to the day we get to see Astro try to charm an AI.
Astro just pulls out his book,
but-
pulls out a book, pick up lines for AI.
You know that probably does exist in this world.
Me as a fan of the players fears for that moment. Me as a game master thrives in that moment.
It's like, yes,
let's
time to
brainstorm some
destroy
ideas,
you.
I think.
I, like the uncaring AI, says, "Yes, human, time to die." But okay, well, I think that catches us up. That covers the time between that mission and now, and we're gonna take a break for tonight. And when we pick up after break, we're gonna move into the future and see where you guys go for here on the next leg of this journey.
All right, I'm ready.
The future.
Isn't it kind of early for a time skip?
It was like 2 weeks.
Yeah. Okay, I'm thinking like every anime ever when there's a time skip like 5 years
No,
later.
it's not like it's not like 5 years later. You're all like young adults instead of teens now. It's really weird.
Astro has even bigger glasses somehow.
Oh God.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us, getting updated with our pilots, and we'll see you at the next episode. Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Later.